All right, members of the jury and gallery, welcome back. And we've all been on the edge of our seats. We've been hearing yelling and fisticuffs and banging sounds. We weren't sure what's going on there, but then I was informed that the jury has reached a verdict before, and just a moment I'll ask the foreperson to publish it. I did get a breaking bulletin from the Georgia Supreme Court. We no longer require unanimous verdicts in Georgia. And so we've taken the law of Texas, apparently, and adopted that. And so you can have one dissenting vote in announcing your verdict today. Just happened to come in the nick of time. So with that, if I could have the foreperson identify themselves. Sir, if you could rise, and I ask you, have you reached a verdict?
Well, I think I talked loud enough. Can you all hear me? Yeah. Great. As to whether there's my name is Brad, not as to whether. As to whether the defendant committed employee discrimination against the plaintiff, we, the jury, find in favor of the defendant. So, you're welcome. Except for one of us. As to whether the plaintiff participated in criminal gang/mob activity resulting in damage to the defendant's property, we, the jury, find in favor of the defendant.
It's a little bit tricky. We just try to confuse it. Is that sign dated by you all?
Yeah, no.
Well, we'll do that.
That's not required.
Anyone has to pull the jury, it's overruled. All right, members of the jury, that concludes your service today. We thank you so much. The obligations of your service are lifted. If anyone has questions for you, you're now obligated to answer those and sign any book deals that you may have. So with that, I think we'll open it up to the audience.
All right, a quick thank you again to Judge McAfee for presiding today. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he actually is a Superior Court judge here in Fulton County, so if you ever find yourself down in the courthouse, you may very well see Judge McAfee again. Hopefully for good reasons. But so now we'd like to open this up to questions from the audience. So as you probably know, we were able to watch at least part of your deliberations. And so I'm sure our audience members may have some questions about the thought processes or the decisions that were made. So who's the lucky first person?
I'm allowed to go, Mike. For those of you who haven't actually served on a jury before, was today what you thought it would be coming into it and what surprised you the most?
Hi, my name is Sorrel. I've always wanted to do jury duty, so I'm very excited. Honestly, I love Law and Order. I used to want to be a lawyer. This is very fun to me. It is what I expected. Like when we were in the deliberation room, I guess we only had a short amount of time. So normally I feel like a jury, it would probably be longer, especially with jurors like me who aren't just gonna give in to what everybody else is saying or who don't necessarily agree with what everybody else is saying. So yeah, I think the only part that surprised me was that both of the lawyer side was very convincing. Like when I was listening to one side, I was like, yes, exactly. I know what I believe. And then the other lawyer would come up and I would be like, wait a minute, I actually don't know what I believe. I really like the tactics that y'all use. Like I can see the emotional pull, but also the factual thing. It was very interesting. Yeah.
So I have a question for you. If there was one piece of evidence that you felt like was lacking that could have changed your opinion on either the main claim or the counterclaim, what was it? What was something that you were sitting back there with just an itch you couldn't scratch about?
I personally would have liked to hear from more employees.
And also, I'd like to be more participation. There's so many people said that she didn't, but then they said she did. That was like, okay.
Okay. Jan.
I have a quick question. So there was a little bit of dispute when we were kind of preparing for today about the first mechanic, the chief mechanic, whether it was a man or whether it was a woman. And if it had been a man and not a woman in that chief mechanic's position, would that have changed any of the jurors' minds on the final outcome? If so, raise your hand.
It would have made me think a little longer about and wanted to dig a little bit more into the actual details, because that would have changed the whole dynamic of it being a woman predecessor, rather than, because currently I felt, and I argued the point of it being an 8-to-1, 8 male, 1 female, and he still chose to hire from outside of his company. And that was that deciding factor for me, because the previous chief mechanic was a female. And so it didn't feel as though it was discrimination. Now, had she been a male, that would have made me consider it a little.
All right, audience, more questions? 10.
You had two very different, you had a geography issue here, right? You know, you had a lawyer from Philadelphia, you had a lawyer from Kentucky or Tennessee, you had a plaintiff who was type in the New York thing, right? You had a defendant. How much in all did the geography, if any, play into your consideration? Did you believe somebody more? Did you dislike somebody more because of the way they spoke, the way where you thought they're from? Did that all play into your psyche to make a decision on credibility and outcome?
I would say no as far as where they were from. That didn't faze me at all. The only thing was she did an outstanding job of Marissa Torme. So you're like, is that the character or is that really the trial? You know, because she did
She's my partner. She's just like that in law.
But I'm saying she did such a good job. You have to question yourself in your mind, like, okay, am I thinking about the movie or am I really thinking about the trial? But no, it didn't bother me at all, whether he was from Philly. That had no effect on me. Yeah, her character was the only one where I just started thinking, okay, wait, is this a spoof because it's off of the movie? Because it was the same exact name, the same characters. She nailed the role. So that gave me some thought, but it didn't change my mind. Any of the other people didn't change.
Yes, right there.
So for number 1 against 7, how close were you? How long do you think it would have taken you to go on the other direction? Do you think that would have happened, or do you think you would have held your ground on your position?
That's a great question, because it depends on how much I was getting paid.
Very little.
So maybe I was going home, and the fact that I would know that it's not going to make a difference because it's just me. I think that's a very interesting thing to consider about how juries become unanimous if people really feel the way they vote. But I think it would take me. It depends on how much I'm getting paid. If I feel like I want to keep missing days of work, I'll probably do 2 weeks or something. But if I'm ready to go home, I would just say yes, even though I would just change my mind even though I felt the same.
All right, and on that note, thank you, Stuart. One of the questions that I was asked to answer, and that the jurors have asked me, I know a lot of you. I'm Brittany Wooten, I'm from Magna, along with Victoria Aiken, who has done all the technology here, so thank you, Victoria. One of the questions we often get asked is, where do they come from, right? Where are they? Are they jury-eligible citizens? And we do recruit, so our trial was venued in Fulton County, and what we wanted to do was create a screener of representative folks that you might see when you go into the jury pool. And so that's what we did. We recruited folks who have different demographics, backgrounds, experience, socioeconomic status, using the census, and we created criteria and a quota for that. And then we invite them to the research, and they show up, and we create and gather a bunch more background information, but they are recruited just as kind of you would in a randomization of showing up to jury pools. So that answers your question. I told you I'd answer that later on, but it also answers there. So any other questions that we can answer for the group, or if you have for the panel?
I got one. The gentleman who gave the closing, I think it's right, very charismatic, from Philadelphia, versus the closing from the plaintiff, which seemed more subdued. Did that have any effect on you guys?
No.
Charismatic versus subdued.
Just the evidence.
Yes.
Although there were different styles, they both presented their arguments very eloquently.
Was that intentional? Did you guys do that intentionally?
No.
That's
No.
who they are.
Who they are.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I agree. I'm personally like an emotional person, so that would have more of an effect on me. But when the other attorney was talking, I was like, maybe, it's just the conviction of it. So they were effective in different ways.
Sort of in that same vein, did how the lawyers, when they were questioning the plaintiffs and the defendants, did that impact you? Like how they were treating, like when they were cross-examining not their client, did how the lawyers treat the opposite side impact you?
Only the evidence.
It-
Only the evidence.
It did for me,
Yeah.
in a sense, because it was distracting and, in a sense, when I felt the combativeness with the sarcasm,
Yeah.
that could have been totally taken out, because when I'm listening, sitting up here listening, I want to hear the evidence. And the sarcasm is just a distraction, and it really takes away from the lawyer's argument. And
So-
it makes me believe more in the defendant.
So if the witness is getting sarcastic, because they do, how would you like the lawyer to react to that? That's like,
Dig
what would
deeper.
help you? Yeah.
I'd say dig deeper into the witness.
Okay.
Pull those answers out of them, even make them slip up if you want to, but reserve your own opinions and your own feelings.
Don't get
Because,
sarcastic.
yeah, don't be so don't put yourself into it and your own thoughts and emotions into it, because then it's almost as if the witness is reeling you in rather than
Yeah.
it being the other way around.
There were a couple of times when they were asking the owner, the attorney was very dismissive and rude to him in the way she was asking the questions. And so it's kind of like, whoa, like let him at least answer the question. You may not like it. It was kind of dismissive and rude. It didn't change the outcome, but it just makes you think,
Okay, that's
Melissa, I think you have a
I
question.
think we have more questions up there.
For those of you who didn't change your decision, how quickly did you make the decision to the trial?
I was making any trial.
Well, it wasn't immediate, but we all came to just listening to each other's talking points. We all came to the same conclusion in the finality of it.
Was there anybody
All
who,
but one, all but one.
did any of you during the trial completely change your opinion, like halfway through think you were going to go one way and then end up going the other?
Well, I did.
What changed it for you?
Well, the point of the discrimination, to me, I really didn't see any discrimination, and even though we all discuss our opinions, I stayed firm on my opinion that it wasn't any discrimination, because, my reasoning for the plaintiff's decision on hiring outside of the company, I felt like it was based on merits. When you putting a person in leadership positions, they have to fit all the specifications of the job, like being able to be leaders of other people and have all the qualities for this position. So I felt like he was within his rights to makes the decision that he did.
I think our fourth person had a thought too. What was that?
What changed my mind was when I started, when I started to hear from the defendant. No matter how much the lawyer was pushing him and trying to get him to really say bad things about the plaintiff, it was like he was complimenting, just how great of a skill she had and how well he worked with her to really get her to the place that he was. He wasn't really trying to knock her down. He was pretty much standing on the fact that he made the decision based on what was best for his company, his brand. But then I compared that to how the attorneys were kind of pulling it out of Mona Lisa, and she was really just spilling it all, like just painting this picture of the defendant being this vindictive, misogynistic type of employer. And so that made me feel as though, hey, maybe she hasn't been as forthcoming as I wanted to initially feel as she would be.
More questions from our audience? Yes.
Would you guys say when you came in here, just because the claim was in suit and there was a claim, were you inclined to believe the person was guilty and then you had to be talked into for the evidence that they were innocent? Did any of you have the mindset of, well, we're sitting in this courtroom for a reason. There must be some truth to the allegation that there's discrimination?
Yes.
Would you guys say that you showed up here today thinking that and your mind just got changed by the evidence?
Yes. Is there anybody who didn't feel that way? No? Similarly, I was curious if anybody felt moved positively or negatively by the fact that we found out that the defendant owned this really expensive car. Did that make anybody feel like, he can afford to pay this, or he's a rich guy? And no, that didn't impact anybody? We've got 3 or 4 more minutes. Any other questions from our audience? Yes, sir, in the back.
Do y'all see this as like a corporation versus individual?
No.
Not at all.
He ate at Applebee's. Third row from the back. Yes, sir.
I don't think you guys didn't get all the way to talking about damages or potential damages in the case. But I'm just curious, assuming that something was done wrong on either side, whether you found that one party, either there was discrimination was done, or that there, with the mob violence claim. If you had awarded damages, where would you think the money's coming from? Who's going to be responsible for the damages? What's your thoughts on that? Because I don't think that was probably covered in the jury instructions. But what would be your assumption as far as who's paying the damages?
So the first or the second one, whether it's for sexual harassment or for the damage to the car? For sexual harassment, I would think that the defendant is going to have to end up paying for that. But we didn't discuss that because we found him not guilty. But had we done that, me personally, I wouldn't have, she was going for a $100,000 job, she was making $60,000 a year. Okay, maybe 40 or 50. You can't, like the guy was saying, I can't say, I really wanted that job, so you should pay me $100,000 extra. That's not the real world. That's not the way we work. So I don't know that she deserved that. Any of us sitting in this room, maybe, okay, we get 2 weeks, and you're like, we got 2 weeks, because we got fired. That's just not real world to say that kind of money. But if somebody had to pay, I would think it would be the defendant, the guy that owned it. And then as far as the car goes, I'm thinking insurance would kind of cover that because it's inside, it's a business.
Or the individuals that were arrested.
The discrimination case would be paid by insurance? Did that cross your mind?
Well, yeah, it very well could have been, yes. Very well could have been, depending on your type of insurance.
Right.
Yes.
All right, one last question from Yemi.
If you knew that there was an insurance carrier for the discrimination case for the defendant, would you have awarded money considering that?
You know what, I actually brought that question up at the very end of the thing in there, but we didn't have time. So, it's different because if the insurance is going to cover that $1 million,
do you just give it to her because it's not coming from him directly?
I don't know that I would give it to her.
Well, no, I need for the discrimination piece.
If you knew there was insurance that would pay out on the discrimination claim, would that have impacted your decision?
No.
No.
Not with her.
What about on the cross claim? If you knew there was insurance,
Sorry, no.
if you knew
I'm a
that,
female, I would absolutely.
what about if you knew that if you found in his favor on the cross claim that would trigger insurance to pay for it? Would that have changed your mind?
I
No.
mean, that might have weighed into it, but it's not gonna do a guilty or not, it's not gonna change the guilty or non-guilty, but it is part of the fact that insurance is probably gonna go ahead and cover that. She's certainly not gonna cover it. I mean, they've been in court for years for her to.
Right.
This is a famous attorney.
All right. Well, I think that's all we have for our jury. Thank you all so much for being here. All right, so with that exercise being over, Mitch brought up a good point, and he said, put it to the audience. Is there anything that anyone here felt that if there was a little more of or a little less of, based on what you've seen, could have changed the outcome here? Did anybody in watching the deliberation say, well, if they had just done this or not done that, we would have had a little bit of a different outcome here? Yes.
I don't know about a different outcome, but I did think it was interesting how some of the facts kind of got skewed. Like, they kept talking about, well, they also did promote any of the men, but I think in the testimony they said that none of the men applied for it.
Mhm.
And so I just thought it was a good representation of how real juries work, right? Like, not everyone's going to pay attention to every detail. I don't know that that would have changed the outcome, but that was just one big thing they focused on.
Mhm. Yes.
I thought it was funny that the one female was hung up on severance, and they would have just paid her severance. Like, maybe that would have been like, if you would have done like a mock or a bogus briefing on it, like, got that information, you would have found that include that in your closing. Like, oh, by the way, she was paid severance.
Right. Yes, sir.
I thought if we had heard from more witnesses from the company, it may have changed the credibility of what I thought either side.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective, this is the second time I've been involved with this fact pattern, and I think that is something that consistently is just a byproduct of the truncated day, because I think if you had all 8 mechanics come up and testify similarly, just kind of the compounding effect of that might really impact a jury. Now, of course, it could go either way. If they all get up there and say he's a real ass, nobody's surprised that he didn't promote her. It could go the other way, but theoretically, they would all be somewhat on the same page, and I think it could really have an impact. Anything else? Yes? Seeing the tweets.
Yeah.
What exactly did she
I'm sorry?
What exactly did she plead guilty to?
So this is an interesting wrinkle. This originally we did this under Illinois law, and we converted it to Georgia law for purposes of this exercise. But there is a misdemeanor statute that says essentially if you incite mob gatherings, then you can be held criminally responsible for that. And so what she pled guilty to was a misdemeanor charge of inciting mob violence, rule, whatever you want to call it.
So was that not enough to make her guilty for the damages to this vehicle?
So technically in Georgia, we would have been able to put it into evidence, and they could have used it as essentially good evidence of her saying the fact that she did it, but it is not something that you can't refute. So she can come in and do just what she did and say, yeah, I pled guilty, but the reason I pled guilty is because I couldn't afford a lawyer. People do that all the time, particularly in car wreck cases. If they pay the ticket for, too fast for conditions or something like, well, I couldn't miss 3 days of work to go to traffic court 3 times, so I just paid the fine. Didn't mean I thought I did it. It's just, it wasn't worth the $150 fine for me to keep fighting it. So both get to come into evidence. Mm-hmm. Yes?
One of the things that stood out to me was we don't know what he was actually countersuing for. Was it his reputation or for the damage to the car?
It was the damage to the car.
Because you would think with the damage to the car, with a car of that kind of money, there would have been insurance on it who would have been subrogated to the rights of.
Yeah, that would make it way more complicated than we're able to do here.
Well, and remember the fact pattern, just FYI, and we didn't get into it, was that insurance didn't cover it because they found that it was part of like a mob act, right? Was it that
Okay,
FYI. We didn't get into all that.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
You know insurance people.
Yeah, one of those exclusions, yes.
Yes, ma'am, right here in the front.
I don't think she had really good lawyers personally because I feel like they should have. I don't know. Like I'm sure you guys did a really good job, but I feel like she had no evidence to prove that she was sexually discriminated against. Like it's not enough for her to say it. Like where's the proof? Like when did it happen? Like how did it happen? Like what happened? Like it's not enough for her to just say it. Like there was no proof.
And that was what I was going to ask is I felt like it was very defense skewed and we didn't have a lot to work with. And so I just was curious if you guys thought, just based on what you saw, if it was more defense skewed than plaintiff skewed.
Yes.
Yes,
How many
it
people
was.
raised their hands
Yes.
if they thought it was more defense skewed?
Yes.
Yeah. See, and that's when you get the case you get.
And in addition to that, right,
So-
that was the big
One of
thing.
the things that changed in the fact pattern and was a surprise to Mona Lisa Gambini was that my predecessor was a woman.
Yeah.
That wasn't what the fact pattern said, so I don't know when they all decided to.
That was a surprise to me and I had to cut out my questions.
So that makes a big difference, because if the person who had the job before me was oh, by the way, this is really how I talk. If the person who had the job before me,
sounds like she's from New York.
they still make fun of me for coffee. I say coffee and talk and all those things. But anyway, if the person who had the job before me was a man, which is what was originally in our fact pattern that we created, and not a woman, I mean, it makes a big difference. It's very hard for me to say, look, I didn't get the job because I was a woman, when the person before me was a woman.
Yeah, I think where the confusion.
He sounds incredible.
And
I think where the
just to add to
confusion-
that, one of the big things is, this is how real trials work.
Right.
Yeah.
We didn't find out that it was going to be a woman until it came out today, because it was a man up until the first person said she was a woman, and then everybody here said,
Yeah.
oh wow, okay.
I think where the confusion occurred is there's two managers in the fact pattern, and the office manager is a woman, but not the chief mechanic. And I think that somebody got. I don't think it was an intentional dereliction.
And even if it was,
But
this
it
is
was
how it happened.
because if I, on the plaintiff side, they could have been like, oh, so she was allowed to manage the secretaries, but not allowed to manage the mechanics. Could have said something like that.
Great lawyers, so.
All right, I think we're probably running low on time, and I don't want to be the person who stands between folks and happy hour. Just a couple of housekeeping things. If you have not gotten your CE/CLE credit packets yet, those are available if you go out this right side of the building, or excuse me, the theater. There's baskets out there. You can drop your completed ones. If you haven't filled them out yet, then you can pick one up, fill it out, and drop it back off. Cocktail hour is back on the third floor where we had breakfast and lunch. So we hope that you'll all come and join us for a drink before you head out. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate y'all sticking through what is obviously a long day. And thanks again.